Welcome to the private parts of wellness, where we talk about the messy, sexy, hormonal, and sometimes holy chaos of midlife and aging. I'm Jessica, a board certified family nurse practitioner and a menopause provider. I'm also a functional health nerd and a real person trying to live a little bit louder. This is where we talk about things that most people avoid, like sex, aging, rage, desire, dryness, body changes, and the weird joy that sneaks in when we stop pretending that everything is fucking okay. Before we get into today's episode, do me a favor. Subscribe. Share this podcast with someone who loves smart, sexy wellness talk, and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You already know, or at least you're going to learn, that I love a little praise kink, so stroke my ego gently. Send me a screenshot of your share, review, or subscription, and I'll add you to my insider list. You'll get my sexy little lipid guide. This is episode 3 of my Sixth Senses series based on the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 practice, and I'm calling it my radical pause season. In this episode, we're going to talk about sexy voices, hormone science, itchy ears, soundscapes, and why auditory overload might be your nervous system's protest. Plus, we'll explore a little autoerotica, testosterone, and a tiny nod to a tape somebody might have made a long time ago. Let's start with the hormones. Let's talk about estrogen, testosterone, and prolactin and hearing. We'll get some of the science out of the way, and I'll probably revisit it in a little bit. But hearing isn't passive. It's very much tied to your hormones. Estrogen does a couple different things. On the outside, hormonal shifts can make your ears really itchy, where I remember my dad taking an actual key and scratching his ear. That's how bad that was. But the skin becomes drier as we age, and it can become drier with less estrogen. And the more we scratch, the more wax we'll produce. So if you're having itchy ears and you're getting older, like that's a real thing. Estrogen also influences our auditory cortex. And when levels drop in perimenopause or menopause, and even PMS, your ears will get more sensitive to background noises. Or you might start to notice that all of a sudden you have to ask people to repeat themselves again. Testosterone affects spatial hearing and auditory processing. Declining testosterone, remember all bodies have that, will mean a decrease in clarity, and especially when you're in noisy spaces. Then there's prolactin. Think of prolactation, which is, you'd probably think like, what does that have to do with hearing? But this one creeps in with stress and exhaustion. If you have too little sleep or you're in a mode of constant caregiving, prolactin will go up. Dopamine will go down, and suddenly every sound becomes too loud. Prolactin, again, it rises with stress. It can also increase with cannabis use and some medications as well. And when this kind of balancing happens, or prolactin goes up, dopamine goes down, and all of a sudden everything becomes too loud, it's not because you are oversensitive. You may be absolutely worn out, and your system is then kind of giving you signals. And we have to we have to start to think of these changes in things that we take for granted, like hearing, not as something that is broken, or especially if it plays into our emotions and our exhaustion and kind of just feeling overwhelmed, but honoring that fact that you're overwhelmed. I want to also take a minute and talk about oxytocin, which I've spoken about in the other 2 episodes in the census. Oxytocin is sometimes called the love hormone or the bonding hormone. And that hormone floods you in particularly when you are feeling safe, connected, touched or seen. And it also shifts the way you hear. And I'm not talking about metaphorically, like literally, it turns down static and helps you to tune into the voices or sounds that feel good. And it is very much like a nervous system volume control. I want you to think back at like maybe your clubbing days, or maybe you're at a restaurant or a bar and somebody's talking to you and it's super loud and you might be like, what? But then you get really close and they don't necessarily need to scream. You're having this conversation and all of the sudden, all the other sounds drowned out. Like you don't hear them and you can just hear that voice. That again is like your nervous system controlling the volume. And it is a hormonal response to feeling calm, trust, and connection. And I have to say, like in midlife, I think there is a need. I think one of the reasons that we don't want to go, a lot of us don't want to go to loud restaurants, we don't want to go to places where we have to scream to connect, is because we need to feel that sense of calm and trust. And also because maybe our ears are not working the way they used to. But let's get a little bit more into this oxytocin, because we can also think about the sounds that are arousing. And I'm not talking about moaning, though moaning is great. I'm talking about voices. You might have heard some of the commercials for audio erotica, and there's good reason for it. What I'm talking about is that there are a whole bunch of apps out right now, and I think even some of the audio books are really leaning into the kind of saucier materials. And some of this stuff can be straight up filthy whispering or low growls. Whether it's a growl or a whisper, sound stimulates imagination and memory. And what you hear will also change how you feel. I think in this world where we're so visually stimulated, Instagram, scrolling, images, some that are real, some that are fake, all of that kind of confusion. The beauty of audio books and audio erotica in particular is that you can paint that picture of what is happening. You can pick the sound, the voice that works for you, that speaks to you. There's also something called praise kink. I mentioned it at the beginning, where the right tone, the right words, like, "Ooh, you're doing so well. Keep going. I love it when you do that." Or even for some people, "You are such a good girl." Praise kink can light up your brain like a Christmas tree. In fact, I once made a tape for someone, and I will just say that it was not peachy and it worked very well, because the voice is power. On the flip side, voices can absolutely kill the vibe. They can kill the vibe to such an extent that they can bring you to a sense of rage, and that is called misophonia. And I know, like, I cannot stand the sound of chewing. It just drives me batty. And I think I don't think misophonia is a trauma response. And it's not like anyone traumatically chewed in front of me. I don't know where it's connected or how it's connected. I just know that it drives me fucking nuts. And again, this is the nervous system's wiring. And so for some of us, some sounds hit harder than they should. And that's, again, you're not overreacting. I mean, your reaction to it, if you're like, shut the fuck up, you're responsible for that. But that kind of visceral response that you might have in a negative way inside the body is your body remembering something, right? Making some sort of connection. And for some people, auditory trauma is a very, very real thing. Now, there's a difference between auditory trauma and auditory overload. It can also be that in midlife, or I talk in midlife most of the time about midlife, the midlife journey, but this could happen whenever people get overwhelmed, especially if you have like neurodivergence, ADHD. Midlife isn't just about hearing less, is what I want to talk about now. Auditory trauma is a real thing, but there's also auditory overload. And so you don't need to necessarily experience trauma to have overload. And overload can be the result of so many different things. And in fact, in midlife, you may not just be hearing less, you may often be hearing too much. And so the overload is when your brain can't filter the noise. Think about an open plan office or a room full of screaming kids, traffic, notifications. Like sometimes everything can be too damn much. I know for myself, I might have a combination of auditory overload and auditory trauma every time I hear that fucking ding from a Slack. It takes me back to 2020. I also remember there was a time where I was very, very into Kundalini yoga, like 12 years, honestly. And that's a whole situation, possibly a cult story. And at the end of the class, they would play gong sounds. And there were times where you could just feel the gong, like kind of fill your body and take over. But there were also times where those vibrations would flood so much that it was too much to bear. While the sound of the gong could take me to this very happy, holy place, it also could be extremely exhausting. Here's the thing, right? Sorry, I hope you enjoyed that silence. Silence can be exactly what you need in those times of exhaustion. But it can also feel like it needs to be filled or a void. And when you start to notice a change in your hearing, maybe you're hearing less or your hearing has changed drastically, it might be time, and it probably is time to talk to somebody about it, whether it's your primary care provider, whether it's an audiologist, whether it's ENT, ear, nose, and throat. It's probably, and what happens if they say to you, okay, looks like you need hearing aids? Hearing becomes an issue of health equity. Hearing aids can cost thousands of dollars and they're rarely covered by insurance. And when I think about people on a fixed income, especially older adults trying to make Social Security stretch, that becomes a real barrier. And many older folks will go without. And the problem is that when you start to lose these very valuable senses, you stop engaging, you stop connecting, and over time, it chips away at brain function, mood, and your memory. And the hardest thing about hearing loss is that untreated, it is tied to higher dementia risks. We've been conditioned to treat hearing loss as something to hide, as if pulling back from the world is just part of getting older. But when we stay silent, literally and figuratively, it can cost us connection, joy, and clarity. And this isn't graceful aging. This is a systemic failure to support people as they age. Let's talk about hearing. Let's talk about what you can do if you have found yourself in this strange in between, not hearing the way you used to, or your hearing has changed. I'm going to name a couple of supplements, but remember, number one, supplements are not FDA approved to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent disease. Number two, although I am a board certified family nurse practitioner and Menopause Society certified practitioner, I am not giving you medical advice. This is for education only. If you want to try these things, you're going to talk to your provider. You're not going to Dr. Google and you're not asking ChatGPT. Okay? All right. Here are a couple supplements that may help. Again, you're going to talk to your people before you do anything. Don't change anything. Okay. The first one is magnesium. Magnesium glycinate in particular. It'll calm the well, it's supposed to, right? It could calm auditory nerves and support stress regulation. The next is zinc. Zinc supports cochlear function, which is a part of the ear, and it also, FYI, is depleted through ejaculation. So if you ejaculate a lot, maybe you're low on zinc, and maybe you're noticing if you jerk off a lot, it's not going to cause blindness. It may cause some deafness. You might need zinc. The third one is ginkgo biloba. It may improve the circulation to your ears. Then there are B complexes, especially B12, which is good for nerve health. And if you've ever been around older adults, and I'm talking about like much older, you might have noticed that they may be the kind of older adult that gets a vitamin B12. And if they don't get that shot, they start acting wacky and not making sense. B12 is great for nerves, cognition, energy. It's pretty amazing. And then the final two are CoQ10 and NAC. NAC is got a super long name. You can just Google. Don't Google. Strike that. I didn't say that. You could talk to your provider about it. You could talk to your provider about it and have some information about it from Google just in case. But you're not going to use Google to guide you, right? Remember that. Anyway, the point is those two are mitochondrial support, powerhouse of the cell, anti-inflammatory, and neuroprotective. All right. So we talked a lot about the nerves and the nervous system and what's happening with the hearing. All right. I want to tell you a little bit about me and my hearing. The first thing I want to tell you is when I was in nursing school, we were testing cranial nerves, right? And we tested the auditory nerves. And one of the ways that you do it, you take one of the pitchfork, ding, and then you put it on the top of the skull. And you also listen to the vibration, right, of the metal to the bone. Anyway, I had some nerve damage, which was really shocking. Now, fast forward to 2020, 2021. I don't know if you remember that time. I bet you do. And I found myself spending 12 hours a day in a room with a very tiny room with a very large air purifier, an air purifier that was way too powerful for the space. And for 12 hours a day, all the time, I was hearing a roaring sound nonstop. And it was kind of like trying to think inside of a wind tunnel. Well, the gift is now I have tinnitus, which is this constant buzzing in both my ears. It's as if the sound embedded itself fully into my ears and it will come and go. And it's now kind of like my barometer. When I'm stressed or overtired, it spikes. Sometimes it's louder in the left, sometimes it's louder in the right. And then when I'm calm and rested, say like on a vacation, it can fade way, way, way down into the background. I've also discovered that when my hearing feels overloaded, my vision gets crazy. Not officially crazy, like I don't actually see things, but it is almost like I can't focus at times if things are too loud. But here's the thing. I used to make fun of my mother for this. We'd be driving and she would be like, turn down the radio. I can't see. Now, I knew she could see, right? But I just thought she was being ridiculous. I was a teenager. She was probably my age or that I am now or younger. But then one day, like I caught myself doing the exact same thing. It all came full circle. There are times where I'll be driving and it's like, if it's too loud, I can't. Like, I cannot, I can't, I can't, I can't. Or if a car is like driving and they've got like their music just bump, 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 like pumping. I think like, how do you drive with that noise so loud? Anyway, Sensory processing isn't just one lane, it's like an intersection. And sometimes you have to quiet one sense to get a clear path for the other. The reason we're doing this again is this season of the radical pause. And hearing is step 3 of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding practice. And we've already done the 5 things you can see and the 4 things you can feel. And now are the 3 things you can hear. So let me just walk you through it. And don't even worry about being in a quiet place or taking a minute to meditate. This is about grounding, coming into the body. Right now, at this moment, notice 5 things you can see. Just look around the room. Move your eyes only, move your head, just gently looking. And then take some time to notice the 4 things you can feel, whether it's where you're sitting, what you're wearing. Just notice. And finally, right now, you'll notice 3 things you can hear. Maybe it's your breath. Maybe it's the refrigerator, neighbor's footsteps. Allow the sound to come to you. Don't force it. Just notice. And as you come into your body, become present in your body. Know that you get to choose what you let into your ears. You can curate your own sound rituals, whether that's wake up music, sensual playlists, or winding down sound baths. I want to invite you to try a little audio erotica. If visual porn was never your thing or not your thing anymore, you can also give your ears a break. Find the sacredness of silence, or even in conversation. When there's nothing to be said, sit in silence with someone. You can also give yourself a break from digital chaos. You don't need 3 group texts, an email thread, and 2 streaming platforms yelling at you at one time. You don't need to have the TV watching you. That's what my mother used to say. That TV is watching you, because all this noise isn't normal. It is exhausting. And when the world starts to sound too loud, there's nothing wrong with you. That's just a sign that you need to shut it down for a bit. Remember that hearing isn't just about ears, it's about hormones, identity, connection, and pleasure. It is about safety. It's about the voices we turn toward and the ones we tune out and the ones we tune out. And sometimes the sexiest thing isn't what they say, but how safe their voice makes you feel. Have you ever heard a voice that makes your whole body exhale? Like the vocal version of taking your bra off. Hopefully, you've learned a little something today or felt seen. Please follow, share, leave a review. You can even drop me a voice memo on Spotify if you're feeling super bold. And yes, I want that screenshot. Show me you shared or subscribed or whatever. Rated, and I will send you my sexy little lipid guide. One last story. The other day, last week in fact, well, it's probably 2 weeks by the time this comes out, but a patient made an appointment to talk to me about menopause. And when she showed up at the clinic, she told me that she had listened to this podcast and she just knew that I was her kind of person. I have to tell you that stopped me in my tracks, because sometimes it feels like I'm just talking into a void. But then someone like her walks in, sits down and says, I've been listening and I felt seen. If you're here, if you've been listening, know this, you are my kind of person. I hear you. If you're one of those people who likes to give a little feedback, know that I'm listening. I eat that shit up. The praise, the stories, the little DMs. this episode got me, whatever comments, like that's a comment, the DMs that say this episode got me, comments on the YouTube, that stuff doesn't just make my day. Praise kink is real. Remember that. Thank you for being here. Next week, we are sniffing out memories, grief, sex, and longing in the scent of us. The fourth step. We're not talking just about pheromones. I'm going to get pretty personal in this one. I'll tell you about the time that I smelled weed and started to cry, and how I gave up running, and I'm going to tell you about the time that I smelled weed and started to cry, and about how I gave up running because of the scent, and how I gave up running because the scent of balls was way too much. Until you listen, you can make up your own conclusions. All right, that's it for today. Thank you again. Stay messy, stay curious, and take care of your private parts. If you want to get in touch with me, email me at jessica@ppwfnp.com. You can find me on Instagram, Private Parts of Wellness, or on Discord, The Menopause Anarchist.